Chapter 1, The Void Before Time. Before time began, there was only the void, a vast, unshaped expanse where silence reigned. No wind stirred, no light pierced the darkness, no voice broke the stillness. It was a world without form, a canvas untouched by the hand of creation. The deep waters lay motionless, their surface undisturbed by ripple or wave, stretching endlessly into the unseen horizon. Above the waters, the Spirit of God hovered, a presence both gentle and mighty, like the whisper of a breeze too soft to be heard, yet too vast to be ignored. There was no hurry in this quiet darkness, no urgency, only the patient anticipation of what was to come. The void was not empty, for it held the promise of all things, waiting to be spoken into being. The darkness was not oppressive, but deep and velvety, wrapping the unseen world in a hush so profound it felt almost sacred. It was a darkness that cradled possibility, a silence pregnant with the unuttered words of life. The waters below reflected nothing, for there was nothing yet to reflect, only the unseen presence of the one who would soon call forth light from the depths of nothingness. And so the void remained, timeless and still, until the moment when the first word would break the silence, when the first breath of creation would stir the waters, and the darkness would tremble at the coming dawn. But for now, there was only the quiet. The waiting. The breath before the beginning. Chapter 2, The First Light, Part 1. Then, in the stillness of the unformed deep, a voice spoke, soft yet infinite, like thunder wrapped in tenderness. Asterisk, let there be light. Asterisk. And there was. It came not as a slow dawning, but as a sudden, radiant burst, unfurling across the void like a golden banner. The darkness shuddered, not in fear, but in reverence, parting before the brilliance as if it had always known this moment would come. The light did not chase the shadows away, it embraced them, weaving between the retreating tendrils of night until the two stood separate, distinct, one no longer swallowed by the other. The waters, once dark and fathomless, shimmered beneath the new glow, their surface catching the light and scattering it into 1,000 dancing sparks. The Spirit, who had hovered in patient silence, seemed to breathe in the radiance, as though the very air had been made alive with it. And then, the voice spoke again, naming what had been called forth. Asterisk, day. Asterisk. The word settled over the light like a blessing, giving it purpose, identity. It was no longer just illumination, it was day, a time of warmth and clarity, of colors yet to be imagined. Asterisk, night. Asterisk. The darkness, now held at bay, was not banished but given its own name, its own place in the rhythm of things. It was night, a time of rest, of quiet mystery, where the light would retreat but never vanish entirely. And so the first evening came, soft and hushed, as the light faded gently into the edges of the world. The first morning followed, bright and new, as the light returned, spilling over the waters once more. It was good. The voice lingered in the air, a whisper of satisfaction, as the first dawn painted the heavens in hues no eye had yet beheld, gold bleeding into rose, the sky itself trembling with the joy of being. The world was no longer formless. It was no longer void. It was alive with the promise of more. Chapter 2, The First Light, Part 2. The first day settled into a rhythm as natural as breath, light and darkness weaving together in a dance as old as time, yet as fresh as the moment it began. Evening draped itself over the world like a silken veil, the last embers of daylight softening into twilight. The waters, now touched by the fading glow, reflected the sky's slow surrender to night, their surface shimmering like liquid obsidian. Night was not empty. It hummed with a quiet music, the whisper of unseen currents, the sigh of the spirit moving over the deep. The darkness was no longer formless, it had been given a name, a purpose. It cradled the world in its arms, a lullaby before the return of dawn. And then, like the first note of a song, morning came again. Light spilled across the horizon, painting the waters in gold and amber, as if the world itself were being born anew. The dawn did not rush, it unfolded, deliberate and tender, each ray a brushstroke on the canvas of creation. The darkness yielded gracefully, retreating to the edges where it would wait, patient, until its turn returned. This was the first full day, a cycle of evening and morning, of rest and renewal. There was no weariness in this rhythm, only the quiet joy of a pattern set into motion. The light was not harsh, nor the night heavy. They balanced one another, each giving meaning to the other's existence. The voice that had spoken them into being watched, pleased. This was the way it was meant to be, a harmony of contrasts, a world where light and darkness were not enemies but companions in the great unfolding. As the second evening approached, the light lingered a little longer, as if reluctant to leave. The waters caught its glow, holding it like a memory until the last moment. Then, gently, the world sighed into night once more. And it was good. The rhythm continued, unbroken, each cycle a testament to the order woven into creation. The first day had been a beginning, but this was the quiet assurance that the beginning would not end. There was more to come, more light to be spoken, more wonders to unfold. But for now, the world rested in the beauty of this simple, sacred dance, the first of countless evenings and mornings, each one a promise kept. Chapter 3, The Expanse of the Sky. On the second day, the voice spoke again, this time to the waters, those vast, unmeasured depths that had lain undisturbed since the beginning. Let there be an expanse between the waters, to separate the waters from the waters. And so it was. The waters trembled, then parted like a curtain drawn aside. Between them rose a great, shimmering dome, a vault of air and light, stretching endlessly in all directions. The lower waters gathered beneath it, their restless surface now cradled by the earth yet to be formed. The upper waters hung suspended above, held aloft by the breath of the voice that had called them into place. The expanse was vast, boundless, a canvas of pure, untamed blue. It was not empty, for the Spirit moved through it, weaving invisible currents into the fabric of the sky. The light, now diffused through this new firmament, cast shifting patterns across the waters below, painting them in hues of sapphire and silver. And the voice named it. Sky. The word echoed through the expanse, settling into its curves like a sigh. It was more than mere air, it was a boundary, a breathable sea between two worlds. The lower waters murmured beneath it, their waves whispering secrets to the unseen shores they would one day touch. The upper waters glistened above, distant and mysterious, like a promise yet to be fulfilled. Clouds began to form, soft, billowing shapes that drifted lazily across the dome. They were the first travelers of the sky, carried by winds too gentle yet to be named. Some were wispy and thin, like veils of spun light. Others gathered in clusters, their shadows dappling the waters below in ever-shifting patterns. The expanse was alive with motion, with possibility. It was a bridge between heaven and earth, a place where the breath of creation would one day give flight to birds and carry the scent of rain. For now, it stood empty but waiting, a testament to the order unfolding day by day. The voice spoke no more that day, but its satisfaction lingered in the air, in the way the light played upon the clouds, in the quiet rhythm of the waters below and above. And it was good. Evening came, and the sky blushed with the colors of the fading light, rose and gold melting into violet. The clouds caught fire for a moment, then cooled into the soft grays of twilight. Night followed, and the expanse became a mirror for the first scattered stars, though their full brilliance was yet to be unveiled. Morning returned, and with it the sky brightened once more, clear and endless. The second day was complete, its work a silent marvel, a dome of breath and light, holding back the heavens, cradling the earth yet to rise. And beneath it, the world waited, ready for the next word, the next wonder. Chapter 4, The Gathering of Waters. On the third day, the voice spoke once more, this time to the waters beneath the sky, those restless, untamed depths that had yet to know their bounds. Let the waters under the sky be gathered into one place, and let dry ground appear. And so it was. The waters trembled, then stirred as if drawn by an unseen hand. Like a great tapestry pulled taut, they began to recede, folding back upon themselves in obedient waves. Currents swirled and shifted, carving deep channels where they flowed, pooling into vast basins that shimmered under the light of the sky. The sound of their movement was a chorus, gentle lapping, distant roaring, the whisper of liquid edges retreating from untouched shores. And then, from beneath the withdrawing tide, dry land emerged. It rose in slow, solemn swells, rich and dark, damp with the memory of the waters that had covered it. The soil was soft under the touch of the wind, yielding yet firm, as if it had always known it was meant to bear weight. Mountains lifted their heads first, their slopes still glistening with rivulets of retreating water. Valleys followed, cradling the last traces of the sea in their hollows before the land drank them in. The voice named them. Seas. The word settled over the gathered waters like a blessing, giving them identity, purpose. They were no longer formless, but contained, a living, breathing presence at the edges of the earth. Their waves curled against the new shores, gentle yet insistent, as if testing the boundaries they had been given. And the dry ground. Land. The word was firm, warm, as though the soil itself sighed in recognition. It stretched in endless variations, rolling hills, wide plains, jagged cliffs, each contour a testament to the artistry of the voice that had called it forth. The land was not barren. Even now, tiny rivulets traced paths through the soil, fed by hidden springs that bubbled up from the depths. The air above it hummed with possibility, as if the very ground was waiting, ready to bring forth life at the next command. And the voice saw that it was good. The seas sparkled under the sky, their surfaces dancing with light. The land stood firm, its soil rich with the promise of growth. Together, they held a harmony, the wild, untamed beauty of the waters balanced by the steady, nurturing presence of the earth. Evening came, and the waves glowed with the last light of day, their edges tipped in gold. The land, now dry and warm, drank in the colors of the sunset, its shadows stretching long and peaceful. Night followed, and the seas whispered against the shores, a lullaby for the sleeping world. Morning returned, and with it the third day was complete. The waters had been gathered, the land revealed, a foundation for what was yet to come. And the world waited, breathless, for the next word. Chapter 5, The Greening of the Earth. Then, on the third day, the voice spoke again, this time to the land, newly risen from the retreating waters. Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And so it was. The soil, once silent and bare, stirred with unseen life. Tiny green shoots pushed through the damp earth, unfurling delicate leaves that trembled in the first breath of wind. Roots wove themselves into the dark richness below, drinking deep from hidden springs. The land itself seemed to sigh, as if it had been waiting for this moment, for the touch of life to awaken its slumbering potential. Grasses sprang up first, their slender blades swaying in unison, a sea of emerald rippling across the plains. Wildflowers followed, their petals soft as dawn, gold and violet, crimson and white, dotting the meadows like scattered stars. Vines curled around rocks and over slopes, their tendrils reaching as if to embrace the world. Then came the trees. They rose from the earth with quiet majesty, their trunks sturdy and sure, their branches stretching toward the sky. Some stood tall and straight, their bark rough and weathered before time had even marked them. Others twisted gracefully, their limbs spreading wide, offering shade not yet needed. Leaves rustled in a breeze that seemed to sing through them, a chorus of whispers too soft for words but too joyful to be silent. And the trees bore fruit, round and heavy, gleaming like jewels among the green. Apples blushed red gold in the dappled light. Figs swelled, their skins tender and sweet. Clusters of grapes hung low, their juice waiting to stain lips not yet made to taste them. Each fruit held within it the promise of more, seeds nestled in pulp, carrying the blueprint of generations yet to come. The voice watched, pleased. This is good. And it was. The earth was no longer barren but alive, a tapestry of green and gold, of rustling leaves and nodding flowers. The air carried the scent of fresh growth, of soil and sap, of petals opening to the sun. Bees hummed where there were no bees yet, as if the world itself anticipated their arrival. Butterflies would one day dance here, but for now, the wind moved through the blossoms like an unseen dancer. Evening came, and the plants did not wilt. They stood tall in the fading light, their shadows stretching long and peaceful across the land. The trees cradled the last warmth of the day in their boughs, their leaves tinged with gold. Night followed, and the world did not fear the dark, the plants simply rested, their roots drinking deeply from the earth, their stems strong and unbroken. Morning returned, and with it the third day was complete. The land had brought forth life, just as the voice had commanded. The sea still murmured at the edges of the earth, the sky still arched overhead, but now there was color. Now there was texture. Now there was the whisper of leaves and the promise of fruit. And the world waited, breathless, for what would come next. Chapter 6, The Luminous Heavens, Part 1. On the fourth day, the voice spoke once more, this time to the expanse of the sky, vast and untamed above the earth. Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times, and days, and years. And so it was. A brilliance unfurled across the heavens, sudden and radiant, as if the sky itself had been waiting for this moment. The first light, golden, searing, pierced the blue like a blade of fire, its warmth spilling over the edges of the world. It was not the diffused glow of the first day, but a singular, blazing presence, a beacon set high above the earth to rule the day. Sun. The word settled over it like a crown, giving it purpose, dominion. It hung in the sky, unwavering, its light painting the land in hues of amber and green. The plants below lifted their leaves toward it, drinking in its warmth. The waters glittered beneath its gaze, their surfaces alive with dancing sparks. And when the sun had traveled its arc across the heavens, another light rose to take its place, cool, silver, luminous. It was not the absence of the sun's fire but its echo, a softer radiance that bathed the world in a dreamlike glow. Moon. The word was a whisper, a lullaby. The moon did not blaze, it shimmered, its face marked with shadows and secrets, its light a balm to the earth below. The waves of the sea sighed against the shores, their rhythm slower now, as if lulled by its presence. And around the moon, scattered like scattered pearls across dark velvet, came the stars. They were countless, infinite, some bright as diamonds, others faint as breath on glass. They did not flicker but burned steady, each one a fixed point in the great expanse, each one a silent witness to the unfolding of time. The voice did not name them one by one, but they knew their place, their patterns already woven into the fabric of the night. Stars. The word was a sigh of wonder, as if even the voice itself marveled at their beauty. Together, they formed constellations, stories written in light, though no eyes yet existed to read them. The great bear, the hunter, the serpent coiled in the heavens, all waiting, patient, for the day they would be known. The sun ruled the day, the moon the night, and the stars adorned the darkness like jewels strewn across a king's robe. They were not merely lights, they were markers of time, of seasons yet to come. The sun's path would lengthen and shorten, the moon would wax and wane, and the stars would wheel in their endless dance, a celestial clock set into motion by the voice that had called them forth. And it was good. Evening came, and the sun dipped below the edge of the world in a blaze of crimson and gold. The moon rose in its place, her pale light spilling over the land, silvering the leaves of the trees, turning the waves to liquid mercury. The stars emerged one by one, then all at once, until the sky was a tapestry of light. The first night under the moon was not dark. It was alive, with radiance, with mystery, with the quiet promise of dawn's return. And the world slept beneath the luminous heavens, cradled in their glow, waiting for the morning. Chapter 6, The Luminous Heavens, Part 2. The celestial bodies settled into their rhythms, their movements as precise as the turning of a great, unseen wheel. The sun rose and set, its golden path tracing the same arc day after day, while the moon waxed and waned in silent cycles, her silver face shifting from slender crescent to luminous fullness. The stars held their positions, unwavering sentinels of the night, their patterns a silent language written across the heavens. Seasons began to unfold, though the earth knew no frost, no withering. The sun's warmth grew deeper in some days, softer in others, marking time in a way the land instinctively understood. The trees bore fruit in their appointed times, their branches heavy with offerings that ripened under the sun's patient gaze. The flowers opened their petals to its light, then closed them again as evening fell, as if in reverence to the moon's gentle dominion. The voice had given them purpose, to mark the sacred times, the days and years and so they did, without hurry, without error. The sun measured the hours, its passage across the sky a slow, unerring count. The moon divided the months, her phases a silent tally. The stars, fixed and faithful, whispered of seasons yet to come, of harvests and plantings, of celebrations and rest. There was a music to their movements, a harmony too vast for mortal ears but felt in the pulse of the earth itself. The tides of the sea answered the moon's pull, their waves rising and falling in time with her dance. The plants turned their faces to the sun, their growth attuned to its light. Even the winds seemed to follow the celestial order, their currents shifting with the turn of the heavens. And the voice watched, satisfied. Asterisk, this is good. Asterisk. And it was. The heavens were not distant, uncaring things, they were part of the world, woven into its very breath. The sun did not scorch but nourished. The moon did not chill but soothed. The stars were not cold and remote but near, their light a promise that the darkness would never be absolute. Evening after evening, morning after morning, the dance continued. The first humans, when they came, would lift their eyes to these lights and know them for what they were, signs of a love as vast as the sky itself, as steady as the turning seasons. They would mark their days by them, find comfort in their constancy, and in their silent movements, hear the echo of the voice that had set them in place. But for now, the heavens shone over an empty earth, their beauty unobserved but no less glorious. The sun set in a blaze of color, the moon rose in serene silence, and the stars kept watch through the velvet dark. And the world, cradled in their light, dreamed on. The fourth day was complete. And it was very good. Chapter 7, The Creatures of the Waters and Skies. On the fifth day, the voice spoke once more, this time to the waters and the expanse of the sky, now teeming with unseen potential. Asterisk, let the waters teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. Asterisk. And so it was. The seas, once calm and empty, stirred with sudden life. From the sunlit shallows to the uncharted depths, creatures of every shape and size burst forth in a symphony of motion. Schools of silver fish darted through the coral, their scales flashing like scattered coins. Great whales rose from the abyss, their songs resonating through the waters, deep and mournful, as if they carried the memory of the void before time. Dolphins leaped in playful arcs, their sleek bodies cutting through the waves with effortless grace. The waters were no longer silent. They hummed with the whisper of fins, the ripple of gills, the slow drift of jellyfish like living lace. Crabs scuttled across the seabed, their claws clicking against the rocks, while octopuses curled their tentacles in hidden crevices, their ink still a secret weapon unused. Every creature moved in harmony, each filling its place in the liquid tapestry of the sea. And then the sky, too, came alive. From the edges of the horizon, wings unfolded, first one, then 1,000, as birds took flight in a burst of color and song. Eagles soared on currents of air, their keen eyes scanning the land below. Sparrows darted between the branches of the trees, their melodies light and quick as laughter. Herons waded through the shallows, their long legs delicate as reeds, while swans glided across mirrored lakes, their reflections gliding beside them like silent companions. The air was filled with music, trills and warbles, the rhythmic coo of doves, the sharp cry of hawks. Feathers of every hue caught the sunlight, the scarlet flash of a cardinal's wing, the iridescent blue of a kingfisher, the soft gold of a meadowlark. The wind carried their songs across the earth, a chorus without end, as if the sky itself had learned to sing. The voice named them. Asterisk, fish of the sea, birds of the air. Asterisk. The word settled over them like a blessing, giving each creature its purpose, its place. The fish would fill the waters, their schools a living current, their presence a testament to the abundance of the deep. The birds would rule the skies, their wings a bridge between heaven and earth, their voices the music of the dawn. And the voice saw that it was good. The waters teemed, the skies thrived, each world alive in its own way, yet bound together by the same breath of creation. The fish did not envy the birds, nor the birds long for the sea. They simply were, each perfect in its kind, each a note in the great song of life. Evening came, and the birds returned to their nests, their songs softening into twilight lullabies. The fish drifted in the moonlit shallows, their movements slow and dreamlike. The waves murmured against the shore, a counterpoint to the rustle of wings settling in the trees. Morning returned, and with it the fifth day was complete. The waters and the skies were no longer empty. They pulsed with life, with color, with sound, a harmony of creatures great and small, each a marvel, each a gift. And the world, richer now, waited for what was yet to come. Chapter 8, The Beasts of the Earth. On the sixth day, the voice spoke again, this time to the land, green and fertile, waiting beneath the vast sky. Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind. And so it was. The soil trembled, as if waking from a long slumber. From the dense forests to the open plains, life stirred in the earth's embrace. First came the gentle creatures, deer stepping delicately from the underbrush, their wide eyes reflecting the morning light. Their hooves pressed into the soft earth, leaving fleeting imprints as they moved, silent as shadows. Sheep followed, their wool thick and warm, their bleats soft as they nosed at the tender grasses. Cattle lumbered forth, their heavy breaths stirring the air, their hides dark and gleaming in the sun. Then came the wild ones, majestic and untamed. Lions stretched beneath the golden light, their tawny coats rippling with muscle as they yawned, revealing teeth not yet bared in hunger. Wolves loped across the hills, their howls weaving through the trees like threads of silver song. Bears ambled near riverbanks, their massive paws sinking into the mud as they paused to drink, the water dripping from their muzzles like liquid crystal. Smaller creatures darted and scurried, rabbits bursting from thickets in swift, zigzagging leaps, foxes with their fiery brushes flicking behind them as they slipped through the brush, badgers trundling along, their stout bodies built for burrowing. The air hummed with the buzz of insects, bees drifting from flower to flower, their legs dusted with pollen, butterflies unfurling their painted wings in the sunlight, ants marching in precise lines, their tiny kingdoms already thriving beneath the soil. And the voice named them. Beasts of the earth. The word settled over them like a mantle, each creature lifting its head as if in recognition. The lion knew its strength, the deer its swiftness, the rabbit its cunning. None feared the other, for no tooth had yet been bared in anger, no claw raised in violence. The wolf lay down beside the lamb, the leopard curled beside the kid, their breaths mingling in the quiet harmony of a world untouched by strife. The land was alive with movement, with sound, the rustle of leaves as a squirrel leaped between branches, the distant roar of a waterfall where otters played in the spray, the low hum of 1,000 wings as beetles and dragonflies darted through the air. The earth itself seemed to rejoice, its fields and forests teeming with creatures great and small, each perfectly fitted to its place. And the voice saw that it was good. Evening came, and the animals settled into the rhythm of the fading light. Birds returned to their nests, their songs fading into the hush of twilight. The deer knelt in soft clearings, their heads bowed in rest. The lions stretched beneath the stars, their tails flicking lazily as the moon cast silver over their fur. Morning returned, and with it the sixth day was complete. The earth was no longer silent. It pulsed with the footsteps of countless creatures, each a testament to the voice that had called them forth. And yet, the greatest wonder was still to come. For the world, now brimming with life, waited, for the breath of the divine, for the first human heart to beat in the garden's shade. But for now, the beasts of the earth roamed in peace, their voices joining the chorus of creation, a harmony unbroken, a song without end. And it was very good. Chapter 9, The Breath of Life, Part 1. Then, on the sixth day, the voice spoke once more, this time not to the waters or the sky, not to the earth or its creatures, but to the very dust of the ground. Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. And so it began. The soil, rich and dark from the first rains, stirred beneath an unseen hand. It gathered itself, grain by grain, as if drawn by a force deeper than gravity. The dust did not resist, it yielded, shaping itself into a form both familiar and utterly new, limbs forming, fingers curling, a chest rising as though already anticipating breath. The figure lay still upon the earth, its features smooth and unmarked, its body perfect in its symmetry. It was a man. But he was not yet alive. The voice did not speak this time. It breathed. A wind swept down from the heavens, warm and vital, carrying the very essence of life within it. It wrapped around the still form, seeping into the pores of the shaped dust, filling the hollows of lungs not yet used. The man's chest shuddered, once, twice, and then his eyes flew open. Light flooded his vision, brighter than anything he could have imagined. Colors burst around him, the emerald of the grass beneath him, the sapphire of the sky above, the gold of the sun filtering through the leaves of a nearby tree. His fingers twitched, brushing against blades of grass that bent beneath his touch, their texture soft and startling. He sat up slowly, his muscles trembling with new strength, his limbs obeying him as though they had always known how to move. The air tasted sweet on his tongue, fragrant with the scent of blossoms and damp earth. A breeze tousled his hair, and he lifted a hand to it, marveling at the sensation. He was alive. And he was not alone. The voice surrounded him, not in sound but in presence, a warmth that settled into his bones, a knowing that pulsed in his blood. He turned his face toward it instinctively, though no form stood before him. Adam. The name was not spoken aloud but woven into his very being, as much a part of him as the breath in his lungs. He repeated it silently, testing the weight of it on his tongue. Adam. It fit, like a key turning in a lock. Around him, the garden stretched in every direction, a paradise of towering trees, their branches heavy with fruit, of flowers spilling across the ground in riotous color, of a clear river winding through the green, its waters singing over smooth stones. Birds flitted between the branches, their songs weaving through the air like threads of melody. A lion lounged in a patch of sunlight nearby, its golden eyes watching him with calm curiosity. Adam rose to his feet, his legs steady beneath him. The grass was cool under his bare soles, the earth firm and welcoming. He took a step, then another, his movements unhesitating, as though his body had been made for this, for walking, for exploring, for knowing this world he had been placed in. He reached out, brushing his fingertips against the petals of a nearby flower. It trembled at his touch, its crimson depths glistening with dew. A butterfly, its wings like stained glass, alighted on his wrist, its delicate legs tickling his skin. He laughed, the sound bright and unfamiliar in his own ears. The voice lingered around him, pleased. This was the first man. And the garden was his to name, to tend, to love. But for now, he simply was, alive, awake, and wondrously new. And it was very good. Chapter 9, The Breath of Life, Part 2. Adam wandered through Eden, his bare feet pressing into the soft earth, each step a discovery. The garden unfolded before him like an endless tapestry, rolling meadows dotted with wildflowers, groves of trees heavy with fruit, and clear streams that sparkled as they wound through the land. The air hummed with life, the scent of blossoms and fresh soil mingling in the warm breeze. He paused beside a towering oak, running his fingers over the rough bark. A squirrel darted down the trunk, its tiny paws skittering to a stop as it regarded him with bright, curious eyes. Adam smiled, reaching out slowly. The creature hesitated only a moment before scampering onto his palm, its whiskers twitching. "Little runner," he murmured, the name forming on his lips as naturally as breath. The squirrel chittered, as if in approval, before leaping back onto the tree and vanishing into the leaves. Names came to him like this, effortless, instinctive. A pair of deer lifted their heads as he approached, their dark eyes gentle. Grace, he called the doe, and Swift, the stag, watching as they dipped their heads in silent acknowledgement before bounding away. Every creature seemed to know him, to welcome him. A lion stretched lazily in a sunlit clearing, its golden mane glowing like fire. Adam crouched beside it, unafraid, and placed a hand on its broad shoulder. The beast rumbled deep in its chest, not a growl but a sound of contentment. Strength, Adam named it, and the lion blinked slowly, as if the word settled into its very being. Birds flitted around him, their songs weaving through the trees. A raven perched on a low branch, its feathers gleaming like polished obsidian. "Shadow," Adam said, and the bird tilted its head before taking flight, its wings slicing through the air with quiet power. The garden was alive with voices, chirps and rustles, the whisper of wind through leaves, the distant rush of water. Adam moved through it all, his heart light, his mind brimming with wonder. He knelt by a stream, cupping the cool water in his hands. Tiny fish darted beneath the surface, their scales flashing silver. "Dart," he murmured, watching as they flicked away in unison. The sun climbed higher, painting the world in gold. Adam stretched out in a meadow, the grass tickling his skin as clouds drifted overhead. A butterfly landed on his chest, its wings a delicate mosaic of blue and black. He held his breath, not wanting to disturb it. "Sky dancer," he whispered. The creature fluttered its wings once before lifting into the air, joining the dance of its kin above the flowers. Eden was his to name, to know, to cherish. And with each word he spoke, the garden seemed to sigh in recognition, as if it had been waiting for his voice all along. The day waned, the light softening into amber. Adam rose, brushing stray petals from his skin, and turned his face toward the heart of the garden, where the trees grew tallest and the air smelled sweetest. There was more to see. More to name. And so he walked on, the earth warm beneath his feet, the breath of life singing in his veins. And it was very good. Chapter 10, The Garden of Delights. Eden was a symphony of wonders, a place where every sense was met with beauty beyond imagining. The air itself seemed to shimmer, thick with the perfume of blossoms, jasmine and lily, honeysuckle and rose, all mingling in a fragrance so intoxicating it was as if the very breath of the garden was alive. 4 rivers flowed from its heart, their waters clear as crystal, winding through the land in silver ribbons. The first, Pishon, curled through groves of golden bdellium and onyx, its currents whispering secrets against smooth stones. The second, Gihon, meandered through valleys where the earth was rich and dark, nourishing roots that drank deeply from its touch. The Tigris and Euphrates, swift and bright, carved their paths through sun-dappled glades, their banks lined with reeds that swayed in time to the breeze. The trees of Eden stood like sentinels, their branches heavy with fruit that gleamed like jewels in the sunlight. Figs swelled, their purple skins splitting with ripeness. Pomegranates hung like ruby lanterns, their seeds hidden beneath crowns of flame. Vines draped themselves over arbors, clusters of grapes so plump they seemed ready to burst with nectar at the barest touch. And at the center of it all stood 2 trees, unlike any others. The tree of life rose tall and unshaken, its bark smooth as polished bronze, its leaves shimmering with an otherworldly hue. Its fruit pulsed with a golden light, as though each piece held a fragment of the divine breath itself. To look upon it was to feel eternity humming in the air, a promise of unbroken communion. Not far from it stood the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, its boughs just as laden, its presence just as grand, but its fruit bore a different weight. It hung in quiet temptation, its surface flawless, its allure undeniable. Yet for now, it was simply part of the garden's harmony, its purpose still a mystery. Adam walked beneath the canopy of leaves, the dappled light painting his skin in patterns of gold and shadow. Birds trilled from the branches, their melodies weaving through the rustle of the wind. A family of rabbits paused in their play to watch him pass, their noses twitching. Butterflies drifted around him, their wings brushing his arms like fleeting kisses. The garden was alive with movement, yet untouched by strife. The lion dozed beside the lamb, their sides rising and falling in unison. Bees hummed from flower to flower, their labor a dance of sweetness and light. Even the serpent, sleek and gleaming, moved through the undergrowth without malice, its scales catching the light like liquid emerald. Eden was perfect. Every sound was music, the babble of the rivers, the sigh of the wind through the grass, the distant call of a crane skimming the water's edge. Every sight was a masterpiece, the way the sunlight fractured on the river's surface, the way the fireflies began to glow as dusk approached, the way the stars, when they appeared, seemed close enough to touch. Adam knelt by a pool, his reflection staring back at him from the still water. For the first time, a quiet longing stirred in his chest, a sense that the garden, for all its wonders, was not meant to be walked alone. But the voice that had breathed life into him had not yet spoken of this. And so he rose, turning his face toward the heart of Eden, where the trees stood and the rivers began. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of rose and amber, and the garden sighed in contentment around him. It was a place of delight. A place of peace. A place waiting, though it did not yet know for what. And it was very good. Chapter 11, The Sleep of Adam. The sun had begun its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, when the voice spoke once more, not to the earth or the heavens, but to Adam alone. Asterisk, it is not good for the man to be alone. Asterisk. The word settled over the garden like a gentle command, though Adam did not yet understand their weight. He sat beneath the shade of a great fig tree, its broad leaves rustling above him as he watched the creatures of Eden move in pairs, doves preening each other's feathers, lions nuzzling their mates, even the fish darting in synchronized schools through the crystal rivers. A deep stillness filled the air. Then, like a whisper woven into the breeze, the voice continued. Asterisk, I will make a helper suitable for him. Asterisk. Before Adam could rise, before he could even form a question in his mind, a heaviness settled over his limbs. His eyelids grew leaden, his breath slowing as if the very air around him had thickened. The colors of the garden blurred, the green of the grass, the gold of the fading light, melding into a dreamlike haze. He sank back against the earth, his body yielding to a sleep deeper than any he had known. Not the rest of weariness, but a surrender, a trust. His last conscious thought was not fear, but wonder, a childlike certainty that whatever came next would be good. The ground cradled him as he slept, the soil warm beneath his bare shoulders. The wind brushed over his skin, carrying the scent of blossoms and fresh earth. Above him, the stars began to emerge, their distant light shimmering through the veil of his closed eyelids. And then, a touch, not of wind or leaf, but of divine hands. A rib was drawn from his side, painless as a breath exhaled. The flesh closed seamlessly behind it, leaving no mark, no scar, only the faintest memory of something once whole, now given away. The rib glowed in the hands that held it, its surface smooth as pearl, pulsing with the same life that had once filled Adam's lungs. The voice breathed over it, and the bone shimmered, stretching, reshaping, flesh weaving around it like threads of spun light, skin smoothing over curves yet unformed, hair cascading in waves of deepest brown. A woman. She lay beside Adam, her chest rising with her first breath, her lashes fluttering against her cheeks. For a moment, the garden itself seemed to hush, the birds stilled their songs, the wind paused in its dance, as if all of creation leaned in to witness this final, sacred act. Then her eyes opened. Adam stirred, the sleep lifting from him like a curtain drawn aside. He blinked, the world coming back into focus, the fig tree above him, the twilight sky, the warm earth beneath him. And then, her. She sat up beside him, her movements graceful and unhesitating, as though her body had always known how to be. Her eyes met his, and in them, Adam saw not a stranger, but a reflection, not of his face, but of his very soul. Eve, he whispered, the name rising to his lips like a prayer. She smiled, and the garden seemed to brighten around them. The voice did not speak again, but its presence lingered in the air, warm and approving. The two humans sat together in the soft grass, the last light of day gilding their skin, the first stars bearing witness overhead. Adam reached out, his fingers brushing hers. She turned her hand, lacing her fingers through his, and in that touch was a promise, of companionship, of shared wonder, of a love as boundless as the garden itself. Around them, the creatures of Eden watched in quiet reverence. The lion lifted its head, the deer stilled in their grazing, the birds perched on nearby branches, their songs now tender lullabies. Even the serpent, coiled at the base of the fig tree, observed with unreadable eyes. Night deepened, the moon rising full and silver above the trees. Adam and Eve sat side by side, their shoulders touching, their breaths falling into sync. There were no words yet for all they felt, only the certainty that the world, already so beautiful, had just become infinitely more so. And it was very good. Chapter 12, The First Companions. Adam and Eve walked side by side through the heart of Eden, their footsteps light upon the untrodden grass. The morning sun filtered through the emerald canopy above, dappling their skin with gold. Around them, the garden hummed with life, birds trilling from the branches, butterflies weaving through the air, the distant murmur of the rivers winding their eternal paths. Eve reached out, her fingers brushing the petals of a crimson flower that swayed in the breeze. "It's softer than I imagined," she murmured, marveling at the velvet texture beneath her touch. Adam watched her, a warmth spreading through his chest. "Everything here is more than I could name," he said. "The colors, the scents, it's as if the world sings just for us." A pair of doves fluttered down to land near their feet, their feathers iridescent in the sunlight. Eve knelt, extending her hand. One of the doves hopped closer, tilting its head before alighting on her wrist. Its tiny claws were weightless against her skin. "You're unafraid," Adam observed, crouching beside her. She smiled. "Should I be?" He shook his head. "No. Nothing here fears us. Nothing here harms." The dove cooed, its dark eyes bright with curiosity, before taking flight again, its wings a blur of white against the blue sky. Eve stood, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Where should we go next?" Adam gazed toward the grove where the trees grew tallest, their branches heavy with fruit. "The rivers begin there," he said. "We could follow them, see where they lead." Hand in hand, they wandered deeper into the garden. The grass yielded beneath their feet, springing back as they passed, leaving no mark. A family of deer grazed near a sunlit clearing, their coats dappled with shadow. At the humans' approach, they lifted their heads but did not flee, only watched with serene eyes before returning to their meal. Eve paused beside a fig tree, its broad leaves casting a pool of shade. She plucked a ripe fruit, its skin splitting slightly under her fingers, revealing the pink-gold flesh within. "Here," she said, offering half to Adam. He took it, their hands lingering for a heartbeat. The fig was sweet and rich, the juice like sunlight given form. Around them, the garden seemed to sigh in contentment, the rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of the river, the hum of bees drifting from flower to flower. For a moment, they simply stood there, eating in companionable silence, the world unfolding around them in endless wonder. Then Eve tilted her head, listening. "Do you hear that?" Adam followed her gaze toward a thicket where a small brook gurgled over smooth stones. Nestled among the reeds was a fawn, its legs still unsteady, its wide eyes blinking up at them. Eve moved slowly, sinking to her knees a few paces away. The fawn hesitated, then took a wobbling step forward, its nose twitching. Adam crouched beside her, his presence steady, his breath even. "Little one," Eve whispered, holding out her hand. The fawn sniffed her fingers, then pressed its damp muzzle into her palm. Eve laughed, the sound bright as the stream beside them. Adam reached out, running his fingers lightly over the fawn's speckled back. Its fur was impossibly soft, warm with the sun's touch. For a heartbeat, the three of them existed in perfect harmony, human and creature, bound by the same breath of life. Then the fawn's ears pricked at some distant sound, and with a flick of its tail, it bounded back into the undergrowth, vanishing as swiftly as it had appeared. Eve rose, her eyes shining. "This place, it's more than I ever dreamed." Adam took her hand again, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "And we've only just begun to see it." They walked on, the day stretching before them like an unbroken promise. The garden unfolded in endless beauty, waterfalls cascading into crystal pools, meadows blanketed with wildflowers, ancient trees whose roots delved deep into the heart of the earth. And as they walked, they learned each other, the way Eve tilted her head when listening, the way Adam's laughter rumbled like distant thunder, the way their hands fit together as though shaped for no other purpose. By the time the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, they found themselves at the edge of a quiet lake, its surface smooth as glass. Fireflies flickered to life above the water, their tiny lights mirroring the first stars above. Eve sat at the water's edge, dipping her fingers into the cool surface. Ripples spread outward, distorting their reflections for a moment before stilling again. Adam settled beside her, their shoulders touching. "I don't want this day to end," she admitted softly. He smiled. "It won't. Not truly. Tomorrow will be just as beautiful." She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "How do you know?" "Because we're here," he said simply. "Together." The fireflies danced around them, the water lapping gently at the shore. The garden held its breath, as if savoring this moment, the first of countless days, the first of countless wonders. And it was very good. Chapter 13, The Rivers of Paradise. The 4 rivers of Eden flowed from a single, sacred source, a spring that bubbled up from the heart of the garden, its waters clear as thought and sweet as morning. From there, they branched outward like veins of life, each carving its own path through the untouched earth, each singing its own song. The first, Pishon, wound through lands of gold and honey, its banks lined with bdellium trees whose resin gleamed like captured sunlight. The water, warm and amber-tinted, swirled around smooth onyx stones, polishing them to a mirror's sheen. Where it widened into shallow pools, deer paused to drink, their reflections rippling in the current. Eve knelt by its edge, trailing her fingers through the water. "It tastes like warmth," she murmured, cupping a handful to her lips. Adam nodded, watching the way the light danced on the surface. Like the sun turned to liquid. The second river, Gihon, rushed swift and lively, its currents playful as it tumbled over rocks and through hidden grottos. Ferns draped over its banks, their fronds brushing the water like fingertips. Here, the soil was richest, dark and fragrant, yielding fruit with colors so vivid they seemed painted by the sky itself. A family of otters splashed in the shallows, their sleek bodies gliding effortlessly through the water. Eve laughed as one surfaced near her, its whiskers twitching, before diving again with a flick of its tail. "They have no fear," Adam observed, smiling. "Why would they?" Eve replied, her toes sinking into the cool mud at the river's edge. The Tigris and Euphrates flowed in perfect harmony, twin ribbons of silver winding through the garden's eastern reaches. The Tigris ran deep and steady, its surface a flawless mirror for the sky, while the Euphrates shimmered with 1,000 tiny whirlpools, as if stirred by unseen hands. Birds of every hue gathered along their banks, herons standing motionless in the reeds, kingfishers darting like blue lightning over the water, swans gliding with regal grace. The air hummed with their songs, a symphony without beginning or end. Adam and Eve walked barefoot along the Euphrates, the fine silt soft beneath their heels. Tiny fish darted around their ankles, their scales flashing like scattered coins. Eve bent to scoop one into her palms, marveling at its delicate fins before letting it slip back into the current. "They trust us," she said, watching it disappear into the depths. Adam waded deeper, the water swirling around his knees. "Everything here does." It hung in clusters, each piece perfectly formed, its skin translucent as honeyed amber. Within, a pulsing glow flickered, soft and golden, as though the fruit held captured sunlight or the very breath of life itself. The scent it gave off was beyond sweetness, it was the aroma of rain on fresh soil, of laughter, of a mother's first embrace. To breathe it in was to remember a joy deeper than memory. Adam and Eve approached it in reverent silence, their steps slow upon the mossy ground. Around them, the garden seemed to hold its breath, the birds stilled their songs, the wind paused in its dance, even the distant murmur of the rivers softened. Eve reached out, her fingers hovering just above the nearest fruit. "It's beautiful," she whispered, as though afraid to break the hush. Adam nodded, his throat tight with something he couldn't name. "More than that. It feels alive." And it did. The tree hummed with a presence beyond that of the other plants in Eden. Its roots delved deep into the earth, deeper than any natural thing, as though they tapped into the very wellspring of existence. Its branches stretched not just toward the sky, but through it, brushing the edges of eternity. A butterfly, its wings the color of dawn, fluttered down to land on one of the low-hanging fruits. Its antennae trembled, tasting the air, before it lifted away again, drifting toward Eve. She held out her hand, and the creature alighted on her palm, its tiny legs tickling her skin. "They love this tree," she murmured, watching as the butterfly's wings opened and closed, slow as a heartbeat. Adam circled the trunk, his palm pressed to the bark. A warmth radiated from it, not the heat of the sun but something purer, a comfort that seeped into his bones. "It's not like the others," he said. "The figs, the pomegranates, they're for us. But this is for more," Eve finished, her eyes reflecting the golden glow. They stood there a long moment, bathed in the tree's quiet light. The air around it tasted different, richer, fuller, as if each breath carried a promise. Adam exhaled slowly, his chest tight with an emotion too vast for words. Eve tilted her head back, gazing up through the branches to where the first stars were beginning to pierce the twilight. "Do you think," she asked softly, "that if we ate from it, we'd understand everything?" Adam hesitated. The thought had brushed his mind too, a fleeting curiosity, like the whisper of wind through leaves. But something deeper within him stilled the question before it could take root. "We don't need to," he said at last. "Not yet." She nodded, her fingers trailing one last time over a leaf before stepping back. The butterfly lifted from her hand, spiraling upward into the darkening sky. Around them, the garden exhaled. The birds resumed their evening songs, the breeze returned to rustle the grass, and the distant rivers murmured their endless stories. The tree of life stood as it always had, a silent sentinel, a promise woven into the fabric of Eden. And it was very good. Chapter 15, The Whisper in the Garden, Part 1. The serpent moved through the undergrowth with liquid grace, its emerald scales catching the dappled sunlight like shards of polished glass. It was the most cunning of all the creatures in Eden, its eyes bright with a knowing that set it apart from the rest. Eve sat beneath the tree of knowledge, her fingers tracing the veins of a fig leaf as she watched the river's distant shimmer. The air was heavy with the scent of ripening fruit, the hum of bees a drowsy melody in the warmth of the afternoon. A whisper stirred the leaves beside her. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The voice was smooth as honey, lilting with a curiosity that seemed innocent enough. Eve turned, her gaze falling upon the serpent coiled on a low branch, its head tilted in apparent interest. She blinked, unafraid. None of the creatures had ever spoken before, but then, none had ever needed to. Their eyes and movements had been language enough. Yet the words did not startle her, they settled into the air as naturally as birdsong. "No," she answered, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "We may eat from the trees in the garden. But about this tree, she gestured to the branches above them, heavy with fruit that gleamed like polished ruby. God said, "You must not eat from it or touch it, or you will die." The serpent's tongue flickered, tasting the hesitation in her voice. It shifted closer, its scales whispering against the bark. "You will not surely die," it murmured, its voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened. You will be like him, knowing good and evil. Eve stilled. The words curled around her thoughts like tendrils of smoke, subtle and insistent. She lifted her eyes to the fruit, so lush, so inviting, its skin taut with ripeness. Had it always shimmered like this? Had the light always caught its curves in quite this way? Her fingers twitched at her sides. The serpent watched, unblinking. Around them, the garden breathed on, unaware, the distant call of a dove, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the river's endless song. But here, beneath the tree, the air had changed. A question had been planted. And it was taking root. Chapter 15, The Whisper in the Garden, Part 2. Eve's gaze lingered on the fruit, its surface smooth and flawless, catching the light like a jewel. The serpent's words echoed in her mind, curling around her thoughts like the tendrils of a vine. You will be like him. She had never questioned before. The garden had always been a place of trust, of unbroken harmony. But now, something stirred within her, a whisper of curiosity, a hunger for something she couldn't name. Would it truly be so terrible? The fruit hung just within reach, its scent rich and intoxicating. She had touched nothing forbidden before, had never even considered it. But the serpent's voice had woven a thread of doubt, thin but unshakable. Did God withhold this from us? She reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed the fruit's warm skin. It was firm beneath her touch, the weight of it solid in her palm. The serpent watched, silent now, its golden eyes reflecting the dappled sunlight. A breeze rustled the leaves above, carrying the distant laughter of the river. Somewhere beyond the grove, Adam would be walking among the trees, naming the creatures, tending the earth as he always did. She could call for him, ask him what he thought, but something held her back. This moment felt like hers alone. The fruit came away from the branch with the slightest twist, the stem parting cleanly. She cradled it in both hands, studying the way the light played across its surface. It was beautiful. It was forbidden. And yet. You will not surely die. The serpent's assurance hummed in her ears. What if the fruit was not a threat, but a gift withheld? What if tasting it would unlock some deeper understanding, some hidden wisdom meant for them all along? Her breath quickened. The garden around her seemed to hold its breath, the birds silent, the wind stilled, even the leaves ceasing their rustling. Slowly, she lifted the fruit to her lips. A heartbeat of hesitation. Then. The first bite. Juice burst across her tongue, sweet and sharp, unlike anything she had ever tasted. It flooded her senses, rich and heady, filling her with a warmth that spread from her chest to her fingertips. For a moment, the world shimmered, the colors of Eden brightening, the edges of her vision sharpening as if she were seeing for the first time. She gasped. And in that instant, everything changed. The garden was still beautiful, but the beauty was no longer simple, it was layered, complex, threaded with something she had never noticed before. Shadows seemed deeper, the light more piercing. The serpent's knowing gaze made sense now, its cunning no longer just a trait but a choice. Her hands flew to her body, her skin suddenly too bare, too exposed. Shame, a feeling entirely new, coiled in her stomach like a cold weight. She clutched the half-eaten fruit to her chest, her heart pounding. What have I done? The serpent slipped silently from the branch, vanishing into the undergrowth with a whisper of scales against leaves. Eve stood alone beneath the tree, the fruit heavy in her hands, the world around her both dazzling and terrifying in its newfound clarity. And she knew. Adam must taste it too. Chapter 16, The First Bite. Eve's fingers trembled as she clutched the fruit, its juice still glistening on her lips. The taste lingered, sweet, intoxicating, laced with something deeper, something that made her pulse quicken. The garden around her no longer felt like the same Eden. The colors were too vivid, the shadows too sharp, the air humming with a tension she had never noticed before. She turned, her bare feet pressing into the soft earth, and hurried through the grove, the fruit held tightly in her palm. The serpent's words coiled in her mind. You will be like him. Adam was near the riverbank, kneeling beside a young deer as it drank from the clear water. His hands rested lightly on its back, his touch gentle, familiar. He looked up as Eve approached, his smile warm, until he saw her face. Eve? His brow furrowed. What's wrong? She stopped before him, her breath uneven. The deer lifted its head, sensing the shift in the air, then bounded away into the trees. I ate it, she whispered. Adam's gaze dropped to the fruit in her hand, its flesh exposed where her teeth had broken the skin. His expression flickered, confusion, disbelief, then something deeper. Fear. The forbidden fruit. His voice was low, rough with disbelief. She nodded. The serpent said we wouldn't die. That it would make us wise. Her fingers tightened around it. And it's true, Adam. I see now. Everything is different. He stood slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. The air between them was charged, thick with something unspoken. You shouldn't have, he murmured, but there was no anger in his voice. Only sorrow. Eve pressed the fruit into his hands. But I did. And now, her voice broke. Now I don't want to be alone in this. Adam looked down at the fruit, its juice staining his palms. The scent of it was overwhelming, ripe, tempting, laced with the promise of knowledge. He hesitated, his fingers trembling. Then, with a slow exhale, he lifted it to his mouth. The first bite was like fire. Sweetness flooded his tongue, but beneath it, a bitterness, a knowledge that seared as much as it enlightened. His vision sharpened, the world coming into a clarity that was almost painful. The innocence of Eden shattered around him, replaced by a stark, unyielding awareness. He gasped, dropping the fruit. It rolled to the ground between them, its flesh bared to the air. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, their breaths shallow, their hearts pounding in unison. Then, as if moved by the same instinct, their hands flew to their bodies, suddenly ashamed of their nakedness. Leaves from a nearby fig tree were torn free, hastily woven into coverings, their edges rough against skin that had never known the need for concealment before. The garden was still beautiful, but it was no longer theirs in the same way. The air hummed with a tension they had never felt, the rustle of the trees now carrying whispers of judgment. Adam reached for Eve's hand, his grip tight. What have we done? She didn't answer. Above them, the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the grass. The first evening of their new awareness settled over Eden, a world still lush, still vibrant, but forever changed. And for the first time, they hid from the sound of God's footsteps in the garden. Chapter 17, The Evening Walk. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, as the voice of God walked through Eden in the cool of the day. The breeze carried the scent of blossoms and fresh earth, the garden still humming with the quiet rhythms of life, birds settling into their nests, deer pausing in their grazing, the rivers murmuring their endless songs. But something was different. The air trembled with an unfamiliar tension, a silence where there should have been laughter. The trees seemed to lean in, their leaves whispering secrets. Adam. The name was a summons, gentle but unyielding. It echoed through the groves, over the rivers, beneath the boughs heavy with fruit. Eve. No answer came. Only the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a nightjar, the soft sigh of the wind through the grass. God walked deeper into the garden, his footsteps soundless upon the earth. The creatures lifted their heads as he passed, the lion blinking slowly, the rabbits freezing mid-hop, the butterflies alighting on nearby flowers as if in reverence. But the humans were nowhere to be seen. A fig tree's broad leaves trembled, though no breeze stirred them. Beneath its branches, the earth bore the imprint of recent flight, crushed grass, scattered petals, the lingering warmth of bodies that had once rested there. God's voice was soft, but it carried through all of Eden. Where are you? A beat of silence. Then, a rustle from the thicket. Adam stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides, his body half hidden behind the trunk of a cedar. Eve lingered behind him, her fingers clutching the makeshift covering of leaves around her waist. Their eyes, once bright with unbroken trust, were now shadowed with something new, shame. Adam's voice was hoarse. I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. The words hung heavy in the air. The garden itself seemed to still, the birds falling silent, the rivers pausing in their flow. God's gaze was not angry, but sorrowful. Who told you that you were naked? Adam swallowed hard. His fingers twitched toward Eve, then away. The woman you gave me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate it. Eve flinched, her shoulders curving inward. The serpent deceived me, she whispered. And I ate. The serpent, sleek and silent, watched from the shadows, its golden eyes unreadable. God's sigh was the sound of a world bending beneath the weight of a choice. The evening light deepened, casting long shadows across the garden, shadows that had once been mere patterns of shade, but now carried the weight of knowledge. Because you have done this. The words were not a roar, but a whisper, a lament woven into the very fabric of Eden. And for the first time, the humans trembled not with joy, but with the first chill of consequence. The evening walk was over. And the garden would never be the same. Chapter 18, The Hiding. The moment stretched between them, Adam and Eve crouched among the trees, their bodies pressed against the rough bark as if it could shield them from the weight of their own awareness. The leaves they had hastily stitched together rustled with every shallow breath, their edges scratching against skin that had never known shame before. Eve's fingers dug into the soil beneath her, the cool earth grounding her even as her thoughts spiraled. The garden, once a place of unbroken peace, now felt too vast, too exposed. Every rustle of the wind through the grass made her flinch, every distant call of a bird seemed to carry accusation. Adam's hand found hers in the dimness, his grip tight. "We shouldn't have run," he whispered. She didn't answer. What could she say? The truth coiled in her chest like a serpent of its own. I wanted to know. I wanted to be like him. The fruit's sweetness still lingered on her tongue, but it had turned to ash in her throat. The air shifted. A presence moved through the garden, not in footsteps but in the way the light bent, the way the leaves trembled without wind. God's voice, when it came, was softer than she remembered, laced with something that made her eyes burn. Where are you? She squeezed Adam's hand so hard her knuckles ached. He exhaled sharply, then stepped forward, drawing her with him. The undergrowth parted reluctantly, vines snagging at their ankles as they emerged from their hiding place. The garden was still beautiful. The rivers still sang, the trees still bore their fruit, the evening light still gilded every leaf and petal. But the beauty was different now, distant, as though seen through a veil. Eve couldn't meet his gaze. Instead, she stared at the ground, at the way her bare toes curled into the grass, at the scattered petals crushed beneath her feet. Adam's voice was rough. "We were afraid." The words hung in the air, fragile as spider silk. A breeze stirred, carrying the scent of the tree of life, warm and golden, a reminder of what they had not touched. Eve's breath hitched. The longing for what they had lost was a physical ache, sharper than any hunger. God's silence was heavier than judgment. And in that silence, Eden wept. The first shadows of evening stretched long across the grass, the stars blinking awake one by one above them. The world had not ended, but something had. And for the first time, Adam and Eve understood sorrow. Chapter 19, The Gentle Judgment. The voice of God was not thunder, not fire, but a whisper that carried the weight of eternity. "Because you have listened to the serpent and eaten from the tree I commanded you not to touch." The words settled over Adam and Eve like a mantle, heavy but not crushing. There was no wrath in them, only sorrow, the ache of a father watching his children stumble into a world harsher than he had ever wished for them. Eve lifted her eyes, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. The garden seemed to hold its breath around them, the very air trembling with the gravity of the moment. "Pain will now come with childbirth," God said, his gaze resting upon her. Yet even in judgment, there was mercy. But you will overcome it. And though your desire will be for your husband, he will rule over you. The words were not a curse, but a truth, a revelation of the world they had chosen. Eve bowed her head, her fingers tightening around Adam's. She had sought wisdom, and now she understood its cost. Then God turned to Adam. Because you listened to your wife and ate from the forbidden tree, the ground is cursed because of you. Adam flinched as if struck. The earth beneath his feet, once yielding and generous, now felt unsteady. Through painful toil, you will eat from it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it will bring forth for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food, until you return to the dust from which you were taken. The sentence settled into Adam's bones, a truth as inevitable as the setting sun. Yet even now, God's voice held no cruelty, only the sorrow of consequence. Then, at last, he spoke to the serpent, its sinuous form coiled in the shadows. Asterisk, because you have done this, you are cursed above all livestock and wild animals. You will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. Asterisk. The serpent hissed, its golden eyes flickering with something like fear before it slithered away, its body low against the earth, no longer the most cunning of creatures, but the most cursed. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken grief. Then, slowly, God reached out. His hands were gentle as he clothed Adam and Eve in garments of skin, soft, warm, a shield against the world they had ushered in. The act was not condemnation, but care. Even in judgment, there was love. Eve touched the new covering, her fingers trembling. The garden was still around them, the trees whispering farewell, the rivers murmuring their eternal songs. And then, with one last lingering look, a gaze that held both sorrow and hope, God turned away. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold. The first night of their new existence settled over Eden, the stars above a silent witness to the mercy woven into their punishment. For though they would leave the garden, they would not walk alone. And that, perhaps, was the greatest mercy of all. Chapter 20, The Leaving of Eden, Part 1. The gates of Eden stood before them, twin pillars of living wood entwined with vines, their leaves shimmering as if touched by an unseen breeze. Beyond, the world stretched vast and unfamiliar, bathed in the golden light of dawn. Adam hesitated at the threshold, his fingers brushing the rough bark of the gatepost. The scent of Eden still clung to him, jasmine and ripe figs, the damp earth after rain. He turned, his eyes sweeping over the garden one last time. The rivers glinted in the distance, the tree of life stood tall and untouched, its golden fruit glowing faintly in the morning light. Eve stood beside him, her hand warm in his. She did not speak, but her grip tightened as the weight of their leaving settled over them. The garments of skin God had given them were soft against their bodies, a poor substitute for the unashamed innocence they had once known. A rustle in the undergrowth made them turn. A lion emerged from the trees, its golden eyes solemn. It padded toward them, its massive head bowed. Behind it, a stag stepped forward, then a wolf, then a gathering of creatures, all silent, all watching. The lion stopped before Adam, its breath warm against his palm as it nuzzled his hand. A farewell. Eve reached out, her fingers sinking into the wolf's thick fur. It leaned into her touch, its ears twitching. No words were needed. The animals had been their companions, their friends. Now, they would remain in the garden, guardians of a paradise no longer theirs to walk. From the trees, a single dove took flight, its wings beating against the still air. It circled once, twice, then soared beyond the gates, disappearing into the open sky. A sign. Adam took a deep breath, the air outside Eden different, sharper, wilder. He stepped forward, Eve at his side. The moment his foot touched the earth beyond the gates, a tremor ran through the ground, subtle but undeniable. The garden exhaled behind them. The gates did not close. Not yet. But the world ahead was waiting, wide and unknown, beautiful in its own way, but changed. The sun rose higher, casting their shadows long upon the path. And so they walked on. Chapter 20, The Leaving of Eden, Part 2. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in fiery hues of crimson and gold as Adam and Eve made their first camp beyond Eden's borders. The land here was still lush, grasses swaying in the evening breeze, wildflowers dotting the hillsides, but it lacked the garden's unbroken harmony. The air carried unfamiliar scents, the musk of distant animals, the tang of earth turned by unseen forces, the faint metallic whisper of wind over stone. Eve knelt beside a small fire Adam had coaxed to life, the flames flickering between them like a fragile echo of Eden's warmth. She cupped her hands around the glow, her fingers still remembering the perfect fruits of the garden, the rivers that never ran dry. "Do you think," she murmured, her voice barely louder than the crackling fire, "he will ever call us back?" Adam poked at the embers with a stick, sending up a swirl of sparks. The light danced in his eyes, but his gaze was distant, fixed on some unseen point beyond the flames. "I don't know," he admitted. "But he didn't leave us empty-handed." He touched the knife at his belt, a tool fashioned from flint, its edge sharpened by necessity. It was crude compared to the effortless abundance of Eden, but it was theirs. A means to survive. Eve's fingers traced the woven fibers of her garment, the skin soft from wear. "We'll learn," she said, more to herself than to him. "We'll tend this land as we did the garden." Adam nodded, though the weight of the unspoken truth settled between them, this earth would not yield so easily. Night deepened, and the stars emerged, countless, unwavering, the same celestial lights that had once watched over them in paradise. Eve tilted her head back, her eyes tracing the familiar patterns. "They're still there," she whispered. Adam followed her gaze. "He hasn't taken them from us." The fire burned low, its warmth a small comfort against the gathering dark. Around them, the wilderness hummed with unseen life, crickets chirping, an owl's mournful call, the rustle of some small creature in the grass. Eve curled onto her side, the earth firm beneath her. Adam stretched out beside her, their shoulders touching. The familiarity of his presence was a balm, a tether to the world they had known. "We'll build a home," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion but steady. "Plant seeds. Raise flocks." Eve closed her eyes, listening to the rhythm of his breath. "Together," she murmured. The stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to their first night in exile. The flames flickered once more, then guttered out, leaving only embers glowing like distant suns. And in the quiet that followed, beneath the vast and watchful sky, they slept, not in the shadow of the tree of life, but under the same stars that had always been, and would always be, a reminder of the one who had not abandoned them. The first day outside Eden was over. And though the road ahead was unknown, they would walk it together. And it was enough.